When it comes to the history of British flying women, you may know a handful of famous names, but there's countless others whose achievements have been largely forgotten. Hello viewers, welcome back to my blimp. Last week we started our epic 200-year journey through the history of British women in the air. Today we enter the era of powered flight, the birth of the aeroplane. And the airship. Yes, quite right, Captain Ridgeable. As the late 19th century progressed, aviation technology was developing rapidly. With the invention of the internal combustion engine, the next logical step was to fit one into a glider. The hard part was building an engine which could generate enough lift without being too heavy. But what if you added an engine to a giant balloon?
That's right, an airship! Now we're talking!
With airships, most of the lift comes from the big bag of lighter-than-air gas, hydrogen, helium, or coal gas.
Exactly! We've already covered the tumultuous history of British airships in another video, so you'd better jolly well watch it.
Yes, and what we didn't mention was that Rose Spencer, with no background in aviation, became the first woman in the world to pilot a powered aircraft. All whilst 6 months pregnant. It started when Rose married Stanley Spencer in 1895. The Spencers were another family of mad aeronauts, and Stanley was obsessed with airships. In 1900, Count Zeppelin demonstrated to the world the first powered rigid airship. Stanley wanted to catch up, but was running out of money. It may have been Rose who suggested a sponsorship with an infant formula company. Her 5-month-old had died a few years before, and they were trying to raise a 2-year-old. Perhaps this was a practical move to help their family. The sponsorship succeeded, and in July 1902, Stanley made a series of flights over Crystal Palace. Rose was allowed to take the controls. This was unprecedented. Women had been passengers before, but not pilots.
Well, of course. Can't trust them to fly the damn things.
Rose launched the airship and circled the skies before landing safely. It was an impeccable performance, the first time that a woman had taken the controls of a powered aircraft. But there was no great media sensation. Rose just went home to look after her daughter. A few months later, she gave birth to another daughter, making good use of that infant formula sponsorship. Stanley died in 1906 from typhus whilst returning from India, where he had demonstrated his airships. This was a shock to the family, and they struggled financially. In 1910, Rose and her children went to New York and started a new life. Just a year after the Spencer airship, the race to be the first to demonstrate sustained powered aeroplane flight was won by the Wright brothers. The world would be completely transformed. Edith Cook's flying career started with parachutes. Parachute displays were popular entertainment in the late 19th century, especially female parachutists. In 1799, Jeanne Genevieve Garnerin became the first woman to jump with a parachute, and the novelty of a female parachutist was enough to earn a decent living. By 1908, Edith had performed nearly 300 jumps under the name Viola, the world-renowned lady parachutist. In 1908, the American Samuel Cody, in a biplane with a 50-horsepower engine, made the first powered, sustained flight in Britain. Edith realised that the next big thing was flying. However, there were still no training facilities in Britain.
Well, that's just not on. It's about time we had some. Even men need proper instruction.
If you wanted to learn how to fly, France was the place to go. Wilbur Wright displayed his aircraft at Le Mans in 1908 and established a flying school in Pau. In 1909, Louis Blériot became the first to fly across the English Channel and set up his own flying school in France. Edith saved up her money and applied for the Blériot School. The French were surprisingly open to letting women fly.
They've always been a little laissez-faire.
Raymond de la Roche was the first woman to fly an aeroplane and the first to be awarded a pilot's license. In 1910, Edith was ready for her first flight. She took off, flew, and landed the flimsy plane successfully, becoming the first British woman to pilot an aeroplane. Sadly, Edith never completed her flying license because it was too expensive. In need of extra cash, she returned home and took up parachute displays again, hoping to take up flying later. But it was not to be. In 1910, during a display in Coventry, she was blown off course and crashed into a building. She died in hospital the next day, aged 31. Had she been able to find a sponsor, she could have been the first British woman to earn a pilot's license. It's a sad reminder that flying has often been only available to those who could pay for it.
Well, as you know, the airship service was originally a wing of the Admiralty, and the Royal Navy has always prided itself on its spirit of meritocracy, unlike those puffed up, jumped up little Royal Air Force boys.
Thank you, Captain. Another woman who could not afford to buy an aeroplane decided instead to build one. Whilst Edith Cook was learning how to fly in France, Lillian Bland became the first woman to build and fly her own aeroplane. Lillian Bland was brilliantly self-taught. Fascinated with flying, she read as many science and engineering books as she could find to understand the principles of flight. After testing a 6-foot-wide model glider in the garden of her home near Belfast, it was time to scale up for the real thing. In her workshop, she sawed and hammered lightweight wood and fabric into a frame. It had a wingspan of 27 feet and was named the Mayfly, because it may fly or may not. When finished, the whole aircraft weighed just 200 pounds. To put that into perspective, I only weigh about 125 pounds, so this was an incredibly light glider. But it couldn't be a proper aeroplane until it had an engine. She wrote to Edwin Elliott Verdon Roe, who founded the A.V. Roe, later Avro, aircraft company in 1910. Impressed with Lillian's design, he agreed to supply a 20-horsepower engine and propeller. In August 1910, the Mayfly was ready for its maiden flight. Lillian took the controls. The Mayfly slowly moved forward before gaining speed and lifting off the ground. Though it only flew a short distance, this was an incredible achievement. Lillian had no formal education in flying or engineering, and yet had built and flown her own aircraft from scratch. The Mayfly was later donated to a local gliding club. When Lillian died in 1971, she had lived through the invention of powered flight right up to the first man on the moon. It's a testament to the incredible pace of technological development. Hilda Hewlett not only had the most incredible hair, but was also the first British woman to be awarded a pilot's license in 1911. Like Edith Cook, she learnt to fly in France, only taking it up in her late 40s. She was also the first British woman to set up a flying school, forming the Hewlett and Blondeau Flying School with her business partner at Brooklands Motor Club in Surrey. Students included Thomas Sopwith, founder of the Sopwith Company, which produced famous First World War fighters like the Sopwith Camel. As Hilda's business expanded, they moved to Luton, where she became the first woman to start an aircraft manufacturing business, producing over 800 military aircraft during the First World War. After the war, like most companies of this type, it went into liquidation and she moved to New Zealand in 1926. Women at this time were not allowed to fly in any military capacity, but the closest thing that one woman came was as a test pilot. Winifred Buller was the ladies' cross-country flying champion of 1912 when she joined the British Caudron Company as a test pilot. They were the British arm of a French aeroplane manufacturer, and Winifred had a key role in fly testing the designs. According to the RAF Museum, Winifred never crashed a single aircraft during her 18 months' time, whereas her French colleagues destroyed 27 aircraft in 6 months.
Pah! Pathetic! I must admit, I simply had no idea that there were this many women flying.
That's why I'm doing this, Captain, to bring these stories to life. In the next episode, we enter the exciting, thrilling, daring age of interwar pilots.
Where could I read about more of these lovely flying fillies?
Glad you asked, Captain. The main source for this video is Sally Smith's Magnificent Women and Flying Machines, which covers these stories in a lot more detail. I'll see you next time.
Lillian Bland built her own plane. Mary Heath and Bailey wrestled for fame. They're part of the scene of girls who loved to fly. You're waiting by the aircraft